Hi. Um, my name is Sawyer, and my research topic for my Lang 120 class is about the anti-LGBT laws that still exist in North Carolina and the aspects in which Asheville both provides and lacks in terms of support. I made this time-lapsed art piece that represents my criticisms of the city's advocacy, and I interviewed my friend as the voiceover for this after he read my paper. In this interview, I will be talking with Roman Kramer about his experience living in Asheville, as well as discussing the anti-LGBT laws of North Carolina.
How do you personally identify?
I identify as a bisexual trans man.
How long have you lived in Asheville?
I have lived in Asheville for 20 years, and that is how old I am, so my whole life.
What has your experience been living in Asheville as a queer trans person?
You know, it's been mostly good. I notice that a lot of people seem to be either queer or very supporting of queer people in Asheville. Generally, I feel very safe as a queer person.
Have you had any experiences with discrimination within the workplace, schools, or other establishments in the city?
You know, just like very basic discrimination, sometimes customers, when I worked at my restaurant job, customers would be kind of nasty, but never upfront nasty. Just kind of, vaguely dirty glances and all that. Personally, I've never really been like actively discriminated against.
How do you feel about Asheville being advertised as a gay-friendly city?
I have very mixed feelings about that, because as much as I would love for Asheville to be a queer sanctuary, it just doesn't seem like we're all there yet. Also, Asheville is a pocket of safety, but like specifically downtown and West Asheville tend to be very accepting. But if you move out further towards the rural areas, it gets a little more conservative about that. So that's also something that's not great. Asheville has a reputation of being very gay friendly and very like a utopian city almost. Like every time I hear like about tourists who come to visit Asheville, they're like, oh my god, it's like so perfect, everything is so beautiful, the people are so friendly, and on some part they are, and it is a very gorgeous city, but underneath all that gorgeousness, just like any other city, there's a level of phobia, there's a level of fear, there's a level of not understanding what we don't understand, and therefore bad. And the further out you get from the center of the city, the worse it gets. But even in the center of the city, you'll see it in like second glances, dirty looks, mumbles, but it's never directly offensive. It's always very much in the background.
Did you know about these anti-LGBT laws throughout your life?
I started to hear about HB2 around the time it came out. I wasn't out of the closet at that point, so it didn't really affect me. And now that I am out, and I have been for a few years, I never really learned much about it besides the basic, law itself. But, reading from this paper, learning that it actually, has much worse repercussions. There's no protection against trans people. Using bathrooms is just terrifying to me. It's really scary to think that, if I go into a bathroom and I get assaulted, that there's not really much the city will do.
So that was the only law you really knew about?
Yeah.
How has your experience in other cities compared to that of being in Asheville?
I haven't traveled all that much, but when I went to Tennessee to live with an ex-girlfriend for a while, we definitely got some worse treatment than we did in Nashville. We got people kind of leaning out trucks to yell and honking and generally being kind of rude up front. Still not on a hate crime level at all, but definitely a lot less considerate, and it's just a very different vibe from Nashville. You definitely don't feel as safe in other places that I've been to.
How did you feel after reading this paper?
After reading this paper, I felt like, I had been thinking about the safety of Asheville for a while. I walk alone a lot, and sometimes I do, have those, their stories and they get to your head. But reading this paper made me feel not safer, but at least seen and heard as like a queer individual in Asheville. I feel like a lot of the time news like this and situations like this tend to get covered up and not really talked about as much, not viewed as important as other issues. And some issues definitely deserve the spotlight, but for me to read this about like other people being able to research and looking into the things that put my life in danger and the people I love in danger, it feels really good to read about. Like, it's an awful situation and it doesn't make me happy to hear that it's still going on, but it does bring me hope that maybe it'll change. I didn't know about the law that doesn't protect victims of queer domestic violence, or that, if they are protected, they are seen as less of a priority than cisgender heterosexual people who are in similar or the same situations. And that is just, I didn't know that was a law, and I didn't know that that was a thing, and it's just so disgusting to me. It's treating queer people as something like literally less than human, that we don't even get the basic rights or aren't seen as important or human enough to be protected in situations that no human should ever have to go through. And it just disgusts me, and it makes me scared because I know a lot of queer people who've been in abusive relationships, and it's just terrifying.
How did you feel learning more about the LGBT youth homelessness epidemic in North Carolina?
I don't have much experience dealing with it very personally. I know that we have a lot of homeless queer youth that aren't getting the help they need, which is awful. I know that, we do have like affordable housing options, and we have like Transmission, and we have all these amazing queer organizations, but there's only so much you can do with the problem we have, and they have. And also thinking about how shelters deal with trans individuals is awful. The separating of trans men into the women's section and the trans women into the men's section is not only like degrading and dehumanizing, but also like dangerous. It's, setting up a recipe for hate crime, and especially like in shelters where tensions are so high and obviously not ideal conditions. Like, it's just awful.
What do you think could be done to help the problems starting in Asheville?
The most important thing, I think, is, to vote senators and local government, vote and empower the people who speak what you believe in. And that is, a good step. And also, donating to different organizations like Transmission and all the others that we have in Asheville to keep resources flowing and keep help readily available, I think are the most important things you can do to help, as well as, making sure you form personal connections with people to hear their stories.